This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Tuesday, April 13th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. A group of Libya-based rebels attacked a Chadian border post in the north of the country as polling stations began counting votes from the weekend presidential election, according to a statement by the Chad government late Monday. The outcome of the Sunday election, set against a tense background, is yet to be announced. David Doyle of Reuters reports.
Vote counting is underway in Chad following an election on Sunday. The outcome is expected to be the same as usual. President Idriss Deby winning another term. This would be his sixth. But the backdrop has been tense. Several major opposition figures boycotted the poll. They include runner-up in the 2016 election, Salah Kebzabo. He's vowed to make Chad ungovernable if Deby wins. Several recent anti-government protests also turned violent, and there was a heavy military presence on the streets of the capital N'Djamena on Sunday. Deby seized power in a 1990 armed rebellion. He's maintained his position as one of Africa's longest ruling leaders via a firm grip over state institutions and one of the region's most capable militaries. In 2018, Deby pushed through a new constitution that could let him stay in power until 2033. He was among the first to vote on Sunday.
It's done. We have voted. And now we are going home to wait for the ballot box to speak.
But there are those who allege the ballot box is told what to say. Opposition figures have described Sunday's vote as a masquerade and said Chadians are tired of pretending elections are free and fair. On Friday, authorities arrested several people, including at least one opposition leader. The reason, they said, was a plot to assassinate politicians and bomb polling stations. The opposition said the arrests showed mounting repression under Deby. The government has rejected accusations of human rights abuses.
That report by David Doyle of Reuters. At least 34 people drowned when a boat carrying migrants from Yemen capsized off the coast of Djibouti, according to the International Organization for Migration. In its Twitter feed on Monday, IOM said the boat, which was being controlled by people smugglers, is believed to have been carrying 60 passengers. There were no details such as when the incident occurred. Drowning have become common in the waters of Djibouti and typically involve migrants from Ethiopia or Somalia trying to escape poverty and war at home by finding work in Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. They include would-be migrants who have become stranded in Yemen after failing to cross into Saudi Arabia, sometimes due to coronavirus restrictions, and drown on the return crossing. Africa must expand vaccine manufacturing to combat the COVID-19 pandemic and future health emergencies, including by forging partnerships to boost expertise and investment, continental leaders and international health officials said on Monday. Africa has struggled to acquire coronavirus vaccines and imports the vast majority of its medicines and medical equipment, leaving it at the mercy of overseas supplies. Its mainly poor nations are failing behind in the global coronavirus vaccination race, with under 13 million doses administered so far to the continent's 1.3 billion people, according to the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. World Trade Organization Director General Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala said it was morally unconscionable and a serious economic hit that just 1.1 per 100 Africans had received a vaccine, while in North America, the rate was over 40 per 100. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, the African Union's COVID-19 response champion and leader of the African country hardest hit by the coronavirus in terms of infections and deaths, said the medium-term strategy should be to expand existing manufacturing facilities into regional hubs. Experts say the COVID-19 pandemic has considerably affected pediatric oncology services worldwide, posing substantial disruptions to cancer diagnosis and management, particularly in low-income and middle-income countries. Each year, an estimated 400,000 children are diagnosed with cancer globally, according to the World Health Organization. Most of them live in developing countries. A paper published in 2019 in the peer-reviewed medical journal Infectious Agents and Cancer says 80% of children with cancer in the United States and other developed nations survive, while many lower-income countries have mortality rates that exceed 80%. Africa 54 health correspondent Linord Moudou spoke to Pediatric Oncologist Dr. Jean-Jacques Atteby Yao at the Mother-Child Hospital in Abidjan and an expert with the French African Pediatric Oncology Group. He addresses some of the challenges preventing proper diagnostics and treatment of cancer in children in Africa.
2/3 of the children are often diagnosed too late, and it's difficult for the family to understand. When you talk to a family about something like malaria, there's a term for malaria in their language, but for cancer, we can't find the term. They don't understand what you're talking about. It is difficult, and we do not know how to translate it into our languages. Since they don't quite understand what it is, they say Western medicine is not the cure. We are going to try to treat it on our own, with African remedies. It ultimately delays the process, and then they finally have tried everything, and they realize it does not work.
To give you a little background here, in Abidjan, which somewhat centralizes the care of cancers, each year it's almost 200 to 250, maybe even almost 300 new cases that are diagnosed. And so those 250 to 300 new cases that we are seeing, that we diagnose, are likely only about 10% of the actual cases. In our better diagnostic test, we can diagnose better, more accurately, and find more cases overall.
For families who are not there, because they are not in Abidjan, it's sometimes difficult to return. Once the child has improved, sometimes they stop following up, and we have limited capacity. You see that on a national scale alone. There are only 2 centers. Given the number of cases expected in the rotation cycles with Belgian hospitals, followed by an outpatient basis for children who are being treated but not necessarily hospitalized. To solve this problem, sometimes you just need accommodation centers, in reception centers, homes for people, and allow these families to find themselves in an environment where they are gradually confronted or at ease. Children in general are completely forgotten because we can't imagine or conceive that it is possible that cancer could also affect children. However, we need to expect that it is like developed countries do. And it must be discovered early enough to improve the survival. Genetics explain a lot, but not everything. There are environmental factors, but in fact, environmental factors do not have the same impact. And so, in the long term, you have to be more exposed before it happens. Not that the bulk of childhood cancers are genetic, but there are genetic factors with genetic predisposition. Cancers in children of sub-Saharan Africa are dominated by Burkitt lymphoma. The lymphoma that affects the spleen is one of the most common cancers in our test.
That was Africa 54 health correspondent Linord Moudou speaking with pediatric oncologist Dr. Jean-Jacques Atteby Yao at the Mother-Child Hospital in Côte d'Ivoire. Tobacco farmers in Zimbabwe, Africa's largest tobacco producer, are pinning their economic hopes on the addictive plant. Despite anti-smoking campaigns ahead of the World Health Organization's No Tobacco Day, farmers say the crop is one of their biggest earners. Columbus Mavunga reports from Rewa district in Zimbabwe.
This is where our money is. This is our bank. So we use...
Tobacco farmer Itai Mazire says delayed selling seasons due to the pandemic forced him to dip into his savings to pay workers. But his harvest this year was the biggest ever, and he expects sales to more than double those in 2020.
The rains were with us, and we did our job. And it's a perfect story. We're getting our tobacco, we're curing our tobacco, and every farmer will be smiling all the way to the bank. He'll get his money, the economy will improve, our foreign currency reserves will improve through tobacco.
After gold, tobacco is Zimbabwe's biggest foreign currency earner. The cash-strapped government expects earnings this year to jump from last year's $452 million to $800 million.
The tobacco industry's potential is immense. It is in this regard that government, together with stakeholders in the industry, is at a very advanced stage of developing a three-pronged strategy.
The strategy aims to increase annual production of the golden leaf to 300 million kilograms by 2025. Campaigners say Zimbabwe should instead work to replace tobacco, which is known to cause cancer, with other crops that are less damaging to health. The South Africa-based National Council Against Smoking notes that smokers are more vulnerable to the coronavirus.
But beyond the COVID-19 pandemic, tobacco is a threat to humanity, and it kills millions each and every year.
The World Health Organization says tobacco kills more than 8 million people each year globally. But for farmers like Mazire, the crop remains one of the best options to make a living in Zimbabwe's long-struggling economy. Columbus Mavunga for VOA News, Murewa, Zimbabwe.
For elderly Americans who have finally received the vaccination against COVID-19, life may be returning to some kind of normal. Licia Bacales has the story, narrated by Anna Rice.
For millions of elderly Americans, their world shrank to the size of their house in the past year because of being especially vulnerable to the coronavirus.
This was our world. This has been our world for a year.
Since the pandemic hit the U.S. in March 2020, Mike Linver has made the decision to fully self-isolate. Both he and his wife are over 70, and he also has asthma. So for the couple, the risks of contracting COVID-19 outweighed the boredom and loneliness.
We did not leave the house except once or twice a day for a walk. And when we walked, we always wore masks. We only walked around the neighborhood.
They didn't even make an exception to visit their daughter, who lives right across the street.
50 feet across the street, immediately across the street. And yet, we might as well be 20,000 miles away.
But now, Linver is counting down the days until their first family dinner in more than a year. That's because he has received 2 doses of the COVID vaccine, while his wife is waiting for her second shot.
That is our big outing, our coming out party, so to speak. Another daughter who lives in New Jersey. We're planning on getting on the train again. We used to go up every couple of months on a train to New Jersey to visit her because she also has she has 2 children.
Edward and Marijke Gero found themselves in a similar situation. Their son lives very close, yet they haven't been able to hug each other in over a year.
I think having our son here and daughter-in-law here for a year and a half living in this area and not being able to hug them or get close to them or really see them very much. They wanted to keep separated from us.
Now the Geros can not only meet with friends and family in person, but also plan long-awaited trips because they have been vaccinated. Somewhat sheepishly, they confess they booked a small vacation right on the day they got fully vaccinated.
To go to a cabin in the woods, to feel that that's okay to do, but it's not like we're going crazy. We're going to a place where we celebrated our honeymoon 35 years ago.
And Marijke adds that she was finally able to make an appointment at a hair salon, something she couldn't wait to do.
Tomorrow I get my hair cut. Tomorrow. First time? Yeah, because my hair's usually here. And now it's like, and we're like, oh, we just got out of jail. We felt so free and so excited. We were like, oh. And I hadn't really driven in a year either, hadn't gone anywhere in the car.
More than 100 million people in the U.S. have received at least 1 dose of the COVID-19 vaccines. more than half of Americans over 65 are fully vaccinated. The Biden administration promises that by late April, all Americans over the age of 18 will be eligible to be vaccinated, opening up the possibility for people to resume life where they left off in March 2020. For Lisa Pakalets in Washington, Anna Rice, VOA News.
Tell us what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, we'll tell you who won the 2021 International Future City Competition. We'll be right back.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market in Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the governments to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. Law enforcement officials in the U.S. state of Minnesota are preparing for more protests and unrest following the fatal police shooting of a black man just a few miles from the ongoing trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, who is accused of murder and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd last year. VOA's Jesusame Ani reports.
Renewed protests and violence following the fatal police shooting Sunday of a black man during a traffic stop in Minnesota. The chief of the police department said the death of that man, 20-year-old Dante Wright, was likely caused by an accidental discharge.
As I watched the video and listened to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet.
President Joe Biden on Monday called for peace and calm.
It's really a tragic thing that happened, but I think we got to wait and see what the investigation shows, and the entire investigation.
The incident occurred just a few kilometers from where the trial of Derek Chauvin, the now fired police officer charged with murdering George Floyd, is taking place, triggering unrest in a community already on edge.
Our hearts are aching right now. We are in pain right now. And we recognize that this couldn't have happened at a worse time.
At Chauvin's trial, now in the third week, cardiologist Jonathan Rich rebutted the defense's argument that Floyd died of a drug overdose or a pre-existing condition.
The drugs, the high blood pressure, take the paraganglioma out of it, right? The increase in adrenaline from a struggle with officers. All of those things combined together, even in the absence of prone restraint, could have resulted in death. Yes or no, sir?
Upon my review of the evidence and the facts of the case, I found no evidence to support that.
Floyd's younger brother described to the court their upbringing, shedding tears as he looked at a picture of his late mother and a young George.
He was a big mama's boy. I cry a lot, but George, he loved his mom.
With tensions high over police violence across the U.S., some activists are calling for defunding the police. This as the Biden administration is standing down on a campaign promise to create a police oversight commission, stating they are instead focusing on legislative routes to reform. Jesus Elni, VOA News, Washington.
As late as the 1960s, marrying someone of a different race was against the law in some parts of the United States. Deepak Dobal visited a couple in Nebraska who are raising their biracial children to be well-adjusted and living beyond bigotry.
We were at the Union at the university. It's basically a place where people come and relax and you check your emails and your class schedules. And I just happened to see this head of curly hair, and I had to get closer to her, and the closer I got, the better she looked, and I had to introduce myself. So here we are 20 years later.
I have 3 kiddos. Isaac is our oldest. Ian is our middle child. Isabella is our youngest. She's 7.5. We homeschool them. We have for the last 5.5 years.
Our children, they do have the best of both worlds in having a black father and a white mother. In life, they don't have to think about choosing a side. The only questions that the kids have asked us about race is, Dad, why is your skin darker than Mom's?
But we're not clueless that it's there. And in due time, as those discussions come into play, he's like, you're old enough, you're mature enough, it's time for you to learn this. And it may come up because our child has a question, or it may come up because of something they're exposed to. Much of what people are seeing and hearing today is based on the hate. And when hate is represented, it doesn't matter what form you're seeing it in, it's a matter of the heart. These are interpersonal, relational conflicts that have been stirred up. And some people, it just started. Some people, that was inbred in them from the day they were born. And heart issues can only be resolved within someone's most inner thoughts. We can't go around and fix other people's heart. This doesn't go in a basket, sweetie. You keep it up here.
Based on what we're experiencing now and the divisions that we have in our society, I have to be above that. If I were to dwell on what I look like and what society thinks about what I look like, I won't be successful as I am right now.
I think you look good. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. But
we shouldn't deny that there's something going on and it's bad.
Yeah.
We need to focus on how can we make it better.
Tuesday marks the start of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan after Saudi Arabia's moon sighting committee announced when it would begin. Ahead of the religious observance, pilgrims on Monday performed rituals at the Islamic sacred site of Kaaba in the Saudi Arabian city of Mecca. Millions of people, mostly from overseas, usually visit Kaaba throughout Ramadan, the 9th month of the Muslim calendar, but the numbers will be limited due to the coronavirus precautions. The Kaaba is where all able-bodied Muslims are required to visit at least once in their lifetime. In observance of Ramadan, Muslims abstain from food and drink from sunrise to sunset. The International Future City competition recently announced its 2021 winners in the first ever all-virtual event. Here's VOA's Julie Tabo with more.
HADI School in Houston, Texas. Congratulations! You did it!
That's amazing! Middle school students from HADI School of Accelerative Learning in Houston, Texas won the top prize in the International Future City competition.
We had so many challenges, coronavirus and following the CDC guidelines, as well as some of our team members attending school online and some going in person. and managing our schedules was all important factors, but thankfully it all paid off.
Some of our team members also contracted COVID-19. That was a big problem, so we skipped a few weeks of work too, so we had to catch up.
Each year, Future City, a project-based learning program, invites middle school students from around the world to create a scale model of a city of the future with the idea of making the world a better place. This year's theme, Living on the Moon, challenged students in 37 U.S. regions and teams from China, Canada, and Nigeria to design and build a futuristic city on the moon.
We wanted to make a city that gave citizens everything they needed and more.
We also wanted to make sure that, in our city, it can rely on the resources that the moon is given instead of, having to rely on resources back in Earth.
42 teams made it to the finals in one of the largest engineering challenges in the U.S., which engages more than 45,000 students every year. Discover E, an engineering outreach group, has been running the competition for 29 years.
I am always impressed every year by the depth of research that our teams do, by how knowledgeable they become about the specific topic at hand, and how they become experts in it. Our student participants learn all about the ins and outs of engineering and city design and everything that goes into planning and building and maintaining a city, but they also learn how to work together as a team, and their confidence just grows by leaps and bounds.
Working on the projects can also inspire the students about the future.
I can take many deliverables from this project and use them in the future, such as the engineering design process.
I personally want to be a lawyer, and one of the things you can do as a lawyer is going into the environment. So this definitely taught me so much. So if I do choose to become an environmental lawyer, I have so much information.
We often hear from teams who haven't ever participated that they didn't realize that there's so much variety within the field of engineering. They thought you could be an engineer. They didn't know you could be an environmental engineer or an agricultural or civil engineer.
In addition to feeling empowered, the winning team receives the grand prize of $7,500 for their school's STEM program and a trip to space camp in Huntsville, Alabama. Julie Tabo, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.